Yeah, so like a quick disclaimer just for the end of the video, right? Obviously, I've shared my opinions, and people might not necessarily agree with it. It might be a little bit controversial and stuff like that, but and people might like take me out of context, say like, oh, he believes this, oh, he believes that. It's just I just want to end things off by saying, right, like, do I hate Ukraine and Ukrainians? No. Do I hate Russians and Russia or NATO and like Americans, Germans? No. I don't hate anybody. I don't have any resent for anybody. I don't want anybody to die. I don't want conflict in the world, right? I want peace. But it's like, because it's my country, I have to, unfortunately, I have to stand with it. And that's why I have to be very cold. But in the end, I don't hate anybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Thirsty Tales. Today we have with us our first and our most special episode because we have with us today Mr. Samir Gathia. He is of an Indian and Russian origin, and he has various amazing and spectacular insights into the current scenario of Russia and of the geopolitical situation of the world. So Mr. Samir, please tell us a little bit about yourself for the viewers, for our amazing viewers.
All right. So, as you guys know, right, I'm Samir. My last name's Gathia. I mean, they're both Indian names.
Right.
But as you have mentioned, I'm half Indian and half Russian. I do have Russian citizenship, not Indian citizenship though, because I mean, the Indian embassy said I couldn't like dual wield Russian and Indian, but the best I can do is Indian person of origin card. Don't have that yet, but soon, hopefully. But in terms of where I am from, India and Russia, from India, well, half my grandfather's side is from New Delhi, and my grandmother's side is from Kerala. Yeah.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and they all live the majority of my Indian family. They live in Bangalore. Yeah. As for Russia, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Actually, my grandmother, she is not Russian, but my grandfather is Russian. So my grandmother, she is of like a ethnic minority group over there in Russia called
Right.
Chuvash.
Chuvash.
And they do have an autonomous region there called Chuvashia. It's situated just a bit west of the Volga River, and in terms of like latitude, it's probably near the same area as Moscow. But where my family, just because my family is from Chuvashia, they don't actually live there. They live in Tatarstan, which is a neighboring, also autonomous region, which is actually a Muslim majority state.
And it's in Russia.
Yes, it's there in Russia, and it's situated on the Volga River, which is the largest river in all of Europe.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, man. And so continue.
So, let's see. Yeah, so it's a Muslim majority state, and they also do over there. They also have their own like ethnic peoples, but I mean, I'm not like none of my family is that ethnicity, but they do live there. But in terms of the particular city, it's called Almativsk. It's more in the south, like southeastern region of the province, but that city, although it's relatively small, only like about like 300,000 people. I mean, it's small compared to a place like here, Bangkok.
Right.
But that is ground zero for the Druzhba pipeline, gas and oil pipeline.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, so it's a oil pipeline
Right.
project built during Soviet times around the 70s, 80s, and it travels through obviously Russia, and it brings all of the oil and gas from like Siberia into places like Ukraine, the Czechia, as well as Slovakia, as well as let's see Romania and Germany. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Poland as well, but don't quote me on that.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
Yeah.
Alright, so you said you had some like fun facts about how where you're from is sort of a decentralized place. Give us a little bit of insight into this. Also, fans, decentralized means that it's like a lot of rules and a lot of stuff about that place is like not owned by the government. Give a little bit of your take on like the place.
Yeah, so Tatarstan, it's like I said before, it's an autonomous region. So they do have some freedom from the central government. Obviously, they are still like adherent to it. They're still below it, like the government that Putin runs. But we do have over there in Tatarstan like our own government where they get to implement like their own laws, their own like state language. We have our own official
wow.
language there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like it's a Turkic language.
Oh wow.
So I mean, when people hear like Turkic, obviously they think, oh, Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey.
But Turkic is actually of this very, very, very large group of not only languages but peoples too. And
Wow.
yeah, and it includes some of the peoples that are present there in Turkey, but it also includes people as far away as the borders of Finland, as far away as even like far eastern Russia and Siberia.
That's such a big revelation
yeah.
for me. I had no
Yeah,
idea
because when you
that.
think
Yeah.
about Turkey, you think about like you got yourself like Turkey and the word Turkey, that one country. But then yeah, so continue.
Right.
And these peoples, they have their basically origin story in the Mongols. So what happened is when the Mongols were like invaded, and conquered all of this massive empire, they ended up moving around a lot of people and like diffusing religion and ideas a lot. And part of this was Islam. And so that is why, as well, Tatarstan is a Muslim majority state, because during the Mongol times, Islam was kind of spread from like the Middle East.
Yeah, there was sort of like a dispersion of Islam throughout the world,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And it was through the Turkic peoples who adopted the Mongol way of living. So think like this like horseback army with like they're not necessarily nomadic, but they do copy. They do get a lot of their roots of their how to say lifestyle back then, at least, from the Mongols.
Oh. Okay, so I have a question for you. So you went back to Russia this summer, right? And so,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you by the way, Samir went back to Russia, and of course, tell us a little bit about your journey there. And so, not just that, also tell me about how daily life is over there.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, how did I get there? Well, like I said before, I have Russian citizenship. It's the only citizenship.
But
I
like
have.
Thailand doesn't fly there.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of sanctions recently on Russia.
Yes.
Right.
So
lots.
a lot of airlines cannot fly to Russia anymore.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the way that I had to do it was, obviously Middle Eastern countries are a bit more friendly to Russia. So
True,
these
true.
airlines, they still do fly to Russia. So I took my flight from here in Bangkok. I took it to Dubai. And from Dubai, I transferred to Kazan, which is the capital of Tatarstan state.
Oh wow.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. One thing, maybe if we like deviate slightly, you mentioned that the Gulf countries do have a sort of good relationship with Russia and they're a little bit lenient.
Yeah.
Would you like to maybe like touch upon why that is?
Yeah, like how come they're like more lenient than say like your Western powers or your like Asian more countries? And of course, it's a sensitive topic, but we just like to educate our viewers because we're here for education.
Well,
Great point.
I'm not necessarily well educated on those reasons myself, but perhaps I'd boil it down to the sheer fact that they're all like, how to say, oil countries. I mean, this is like my educated guess. Like I said before, I'm not particularly well versed, but I mean, in the past, the Soviet Union and Russia today, they do sell weapons to that region, and these are all oil countries, so they share a mutual interest of trying to increase the oil price so that they get more profit.
Oh yeah.
That's such a good point because we've never thought of oil being maybe like a collaboration in the oil market.
Yeah,
but
Because
like-
it kind of benefits everyone, right? Wow.
But so also I was going back to it. So how do you think the Russia and you like the so what's going on in Russia right now? How do you think it's affecting like the rest of the world? Of course, we can go back to your daily life, but seeing as we're already in this topic, let's divulge a bit deeper
Yeah.
into it. So, how has the Russian like war sort of not just impacted Russia, but because many people say Russia is doing actually in fact better than before the war, and so
That's such a good point,
how-
right?
how-
And that's counterintuitive. So yeah, go on.
so like okay, let me finish my question and then you can go on.
Yeah.
So how has it sort of badly impacted other countries and how has it sort of been a better situation for Russia? Like
Well, first things first. I mean, the Russian government doesn't call it a war, right? They say,
Oh.
they haven't.
Really, because our viewers don't really know the Russian perspective. So please. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously on the news and stuff, you'll hear Ukraine being called a war, but from in Russia, the Russian government, they haven't declared it a war. They've declared it as a special military operation. So think of it as perhaps like some of the like counterterrorism stuff that
Yes, for
America
sure.
has
Yeah.
done in like say like
Oh.
Afghanistan.
Iraq and
It's supposed to be the state of the conflict right now. It's from the Russian military and government perspective. It's not a full out war. It's more of like a low intensity how to say intervention, I guess.
Okay.
Basically, they want to. They're not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But why do you think
how better.
why is the intervention happening? Like of course, obviously me and you know, it's because Ukraine left NATO, but give us a little bit of a deeper like understanding into why Russia has sort of started this.
Well, now, Ukraine was never in NATO in the first place. The whole reason why, at least on Western media,
Right,
at least,
right.
that they sell is that Russia doesn't want Ukraine to join
Join,
NATO.
yeah, and it was about to, but then Russia stopped it right before it was
Yeah,
about to, or
yeah.
something like that. Right?
That's at least the narrative that we see on the Western media. But so the reason why it's not a war, officially speaking, is because the Russian constitution does not allow for the Russian president,
Right.
like Putin, for example,
Right.
to declare an offensive war.
Really?
It's illegal according to the constitution.
Wait, but
Well,
then
so
like
then-
you,
yeah, go
okay,
on.
but you read newspapers and it's like Putin has declared war. Is that
so
just
so when a conflict starts, usually not all the time, but usually the leader of the attacking nation will make an announcement that we will go fight this
Right,
other
right. Yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah,
It's
for
it's
sure,
a
for sure.
declaration of war. Yes, that's what it's normally called.
Right.
But in his speech, Putin, right? He said he declared it as a special military operation, not a war, because it's illegal for him
so
to declare it a war. And on top of that,
Right.
if it was a war, then all of the laws,
Right.
conscription laws,
Right.
would be immediately activated. So everybody who's like 18 up until like even their 30s, 40s would get conscripted
Oh,
into the army.
really?
Yes.
Oh my! I did not actually know that, and this kind of gives me like a flashback to the naval blockade sort of thing that happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis,
Yes.
right? When
Yes.
Britain was like, this is not like a war or
Yeah,
it's just a
yeah,
blockade. So that's quite interesting. I feel like there's a connection between World War II and this thing, which is quite nice.
Okay, yeah. So we got some other questions for you lined up, and so I mean, let's go back to a question that we asked you before, because like we talk a lot, so we kind of like go away from the
Yeah.
question. So can you tell us about daily life in Russia, and like tell us about like not just like, because I know that you're in Tatarstan, but also talk about I know that you have relatives that are around the Russia, Ukraine, like around that area. So can you give us a little bit of insight into what's going on, like?
Wait,
And-
firstly, that's amazing. So you have relatives that live in Russia and you have relatives that live in Ukraine also. So you
Yeah.
have both perspectives. And
well-
you have an outsider's perspective on the war.
I wouldn't say that. Yes, do I have family in Russia and Ukraine?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because you see, all my entire like Russian side of my family, they're all Russians. Like I mean, like my grandma, for example, that's an exception, right? She's Chuvash, but like her passport, it's all Russian, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
so And as for my family my extended family in Ukraine, they are also Russians. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, they found themselves trapped in Ukraine.
Oh.
So yeah, because back then, right, it was all one
Right,
border.
it happens.
Yeah,
So
right,
so
right.
so the moment the Soviet Union collapsed, even though they are ethnically Russian, because they were physically in Ukraine, they became like by according to the local government there Ukrainians, and they would have gotten a Ukrainian passport system even though they're ethnically Russian. And that's how a
Wow.
lot of the Russians that are in Ukraine today, that's how a lot of them ended up there in the first
Oh
place.
wow.
That is enlightening.
Okay, so
Wow.
let's go back. Let's dive back to the question.
Yeah.
Daily life.
So daily life, I mean, like I said, I am in a autonomous state, autonomous region. So things are not necessarily representative. Things there are not representative of the entire country. But what did I see there in Almaty? Well, I think contradictory to what a lot of people would assume is that things over there are getting better. As in, like, infrastructure and education, like public services, these are all improving. The quality of life is improving, at least in that particular town
what
of
about
Wait,
the-
so
Almaty.
you're saying you're comparing this to the war, right? So you're saying that after the war, things have been improving for that region,
Conflict.
or after the conflict.
Conflict. But I have a question. Shouldn't the conflict, like when a country goes into war, you have SWIFT, you have all of these other payments, you have all these other
Yes.
foreign brands that sort of like alienate themselves away from Russia
That's
due to the war.
absolutely.
So how is the country doing better? Like that like
Yeah,
it
so
shocks my mind. Like even like tell us even about the tasty story and that's it.
yeah.
We'll continue. Yes, we'll continue.
So like I said before, right? My town, it's small, it's a little bit isolated, and it's an autonomous region. So it's not necessarily representative of the entire country. And I mean, I didn't get to. Usually, I'll travel to cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow, and to neighboring oblasts, provinces like Samara or Chuvashia. But
Yeah.
this year, I didn't get to go.
Okay.
So I was, yeah, just pretty much bound within Tatarstan. So what did I see there? I mean, people there are not necessarily very reliant on these Western brands in the first place.
Yeah.
So when things like McDonald's, H&M, and like all of these Western brands, when they left,
Right.
I mean, people didn't really care all that much in that small town, at least.
Oh.
Yeah, like they use more like local Russian
Right,
brands.
right, I get
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And in that town, at least in my family, they don't like Western food all that much.
Okay,
So
wow.
yeah. So like McDonald's leaving for them,
Right.
it's not really that big of a deal.
Then what happened? Because you have some tasty, so like
Yeah. So in that town, there's one McDonald's
Oh.
in the entire town, just one. And it's I arrived the day I arrived. It was already closed, but the
Oh.
the golden arches,
Right,
they
right,
were
right.
still standing there.
Okay.
The next day, when I was like walking by that
Right.
McDonald's, I saw that they had taken down the M, and it was lying
Really?
down. Yeah, it was lying down there. We can show some pictures.
yeah,
it was lying
we'll get
down.
the pictures loaded up.
It was lying down there on the ground. Like they took it down with like a crane and stuff. It was there
wait,
sitting
so
on the ground.
Well, by they you mean McDonald's themselves or some people
Like,
in
well,
the
how
town
does
or
that, like
something?
how does that work when
I'd-
countries like sort of like how McDonald's and these companies they alienate themselves? So what actually happens? Like, is Russia just forced? Like, do they just not get the ingredients? Because you could easily like grow the ingredients in your country. So how does that work? Like,
So McDonald's, at least for Russia, before they left, they already sourced a lot of the ingredients from Russia.
Right, because
Like-
Russia's mainly an agriculture economy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or soil
Russia
economy,
has
right.
a massive grain and a massive
Right.
dairy industry. So there's like a lot of beef, just in general, like there's a strong agriculture
Yeah, of
economy.
course.
So the McDonald's locations in Russia, they got most of their ingredients from Russian suppliers.
Wow. Okay, but one thing I love how vocal for local Russia is. Like right? Yeah. they're sourcing their ingredients even for foreign brands from Russia itself. The people kind of are more like, inclined towards eating local food. I love that, and that's a really big thing in today's like, globalized sort of environment. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Let's continue about the tasty story so our viewers don't get a bit confused because we said the word and then we didn't really
Yeah.
explain it much. Okay, so
So, I mean, when I say they, you were asking who's they.
Yeah.
Well, it was when McDonald's left. It was bought by like this, like I don't know. I honestly don't know who he is. It's, but all I know is that he's some rich businessman who was previously based in Siberia. And the moment McDonald's announced that they were leaving, he
Right.
struck some sort of deal with McDonald's to buy all of the locations and to basically rebrand all of the local McDonald's
wow.
locations
into what?
into this new brand. In Russian, it's called Kusny i Pochka.
Which means pochka.
Kusny i Pochka.
Beautiful.
So it doesn't translate well into English because pochka, it's like a expression that doesn't exist in English. But the best way you can say it in English is tasty, and that's it.
Wow.
And so
Yeah, that's catchy.
and
Tasty.
so
That's
and
it.
so in that McDonald's and in that Tasties and that's it, you got everything the same that you would get in McDonald's.
Mostly, yeah, for the most part.
Right.
We can put some pictures. It was
Right.
actually pretty eerie eating there. So once they did
Oh.
take down the M
Right.
and they like rebranded it and stuff. So what I observed was the food there, the menu was pretty much the same thing.
Right.
Not much had changed. But obviously all of the branding changed, but the food packaging, this is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll send you guys some pictures. But all of the packaging had lost its branding.
Whoa.
So like, for example, with the chicken nuggets, right? They have like this
Sure.
little like
Yeah, the
container,
thing,
right?
right, yeah.
Usually you'll have like a McDonald's logo on there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
But it was completely gone. It was just white. It's just white.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's the same thing for like the soda
Right,
bottles, right?
right.
Like usually you'll have an M on there, but it's completely white.
So basically, in the supply chain, before they put on the logos and stuff, the guy just bought the stuff before the logos happened.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
That's so awesome. And one thing I like to go into now, since we're in this topic, is this really great use of opportunity. Because that rich businessman, Siberian guy,
Yeah.
he turned adversity into a massive opportunity because that's such a good business idea. So was there like anything else in Russia that happened? Like something like that, some people used this adverse kind of circumstances,
Like, okay,
and turned them into
Like,
opportunity.
okay, we let's get back to it from oligarchs. So Russia is run by a lot of oligarchs. So what happened to those when the war was raised? Because like also for you Formula One fans, Nikita Mazepin was sort of removed from the Formula One team due to the fact that his dad had connections, and so he was removed from the Haas. His contract was exterminated. They stopped racing in Sochi. So what I'm trying to get back to is that what happened to the oligarchs once the Russian conflict happened?
Oh boy, well, that is something very complicated, and
Okay.
truly I don't understand it well. And I would say, dare I say, nobody that's not in that circle of oligarchs and close to Putin, nobody who's outside of that circle truly knows what's actually going on with all of these oligarchs. But what we can see from the outside perspective, with all of the, obviously on the Russian news, they don't talk about it
Right,
much,
yeah,
right?
they
They
probably
avoid
don't
it.
talk about
but
it,
but
right,
but on the Western media, you see all of this news about like how these sanctions that the West has imposed on Russia, it's like it affects the oligarchs, as in
Right.
they can't like use their wealth all that much. They can't
Also, by the way,
transfer it.
just for all the viewers, oligarch means like rich people who have some sort of government influence in the company, right? Is that a good definition?
Yeah. So it's basically just this close circle of really rich and powerful people who have deep connections in the government. They are basically, even though they're not formally in the government, they have powers as though they were in the government. But I mean, that's the normal definition. But I would say in Russia's case, it's
Right.
pretty unique in that it's not that the oligarchs necessarily have a lot of power, but that they
Okay.
instead they win favors with Putin.
Yes.
So they become friends with him, and it's through Putin that they get their power. So
That's so interesting.
the
Go on.
moment that they lose their relationship with Putin, they automatically become powerless
Powerless,
in
right.
terms of Russian government.
Right. Okay. So now, yeah, go on. So
So
about
so
them.
I mean, you'll see a lot of this news about how like sanctions are affecting how the
Right.
oligarchs
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
use
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah,
wealth,
yeah.
and how they can't like travel, and like their yachts are stranded.
Yeah, you'll see that in the news a lot.
Yeah. So apart from that, I'd say my speculation is that in the close circle that's still loyal to Putin, obviously they'll be a bit nervous. Right, it's like a complicated geopolitical
Yeah, of course,
situation
of
here.
course.
So they have to like basically play like some 4D chess right here to yeah to navigate
Right.
like
Go on.
how do I protect myself and my business from but still like satisfy Putin, still be friends with Putin, right? Like yeah.
Right. Yeah. For sure. Because it's kind of like a balance between ethics, and also saving yourself. Is that so?
I mean they have their own interests, and they have their own like personal interests,
Right.
but then they also have the interest of Putin, right? They want to like
Right.
still like be friends with him. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's a very tense situation.
Tense situation. So does ethics not come into play here?
I don't know.
You don't know,
I
okay.
can't step into the mind of the oligarch. I don't
Okay,
know
that's
what
a good
they're
point, and
feeling.
it's good to not go where we don't have a lot.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
information, right?
This is just my speculation.
Okay, good.
I have one
Nice to be
question
on.
that sort of took me by surprise. So, I think this was Art that came up with this question. Art, you can ask about the ruble.
For sure, yeah, because in the news, right, we saw stuff like the Russian ruble is now stronger than it was before the war, and there were a couple of reasons mentioned, but maybe you could illuminate
Like you'd
this
see the
point
graphs, it'd be
more.
like going down. We can put a graph up to show people.
For sure, yeah,
Like a
it's
graph
on
is
there.
going down, and then it's like having an upturn, and you're just thinking to yourself, this country, almost like 95% of different Western companies have removed themselves from the company. Countries have like removed relationships with them. There's
Right.
been so much going on. You have like them banned from so many sporting events. So how is the Russian ruble stronger and better than ever?
So, first things first is what I'll say is that it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
It
right?
is like a temporary thing. So, what has happened is the ruble has already been on like this small decline throughout the years from
Exactly.
Yeah, of
from,
course,
from
yeah.
from like tensions between Russia and the West in
Of course, of
general.
course.
As yeah, so what happened is when all of those sanctions started, obviously, and the conflict that's taking place in Ukraine started, when all of that started, the ruble, it was supposed to crash, but then the Russian bank, the central bank, they closed like all trading of the ruble.
Okay.
So basically, like when you're people who were forex trading,
Yeah, so explain this in simple terms. Yeah, okay, go.
yeah, people who were like who want to like make profit by exchanging currencies, like taking advantage of the currency exchange
Yeah,
rate.
of course.
These people, they were basically like they lost the ability to sell their ruble.
Yeah.
So
Whoa.
because what happens, right, it's like a supply and demand thing, right, with stocks, and same with currencies. Whenever you sell a lot of it, the price of it goes down.
Most
But then
definitely.
when a lot of people buy it at the same time, the price tends to go up.
Of course.
So what they did is, because the price was going down, they stopped people from being able to sell it, so that it couldn't go down more.
That is awesome. Go
Yes.
on.
And the reason why now, instead of staying there at the
Right.
bottom,
Yeah, yeah.
the reason why it went back up is because the Russian government, they implemented a lot of hasty policies that basically drive the demand up for the ruble. So things like before with oil, right? Like I said, Russia's a big oil
Yeah, yeah,
oil
yeah.
producer.
Like you got yourself your
Yeah, yeah.
sunflower oil and your
Yeah,
other oil.
they sell a lot of oil, especially to Europe. So what they've done is they've said, all right, ex-European country, right? Instead of paying for the oil in American dollars now or in euros, now you have to pay in rubles.
That's so smart. Go on.
So now the demand for rubles has gone up, because these countries now they have to buy the ruble.
Right, they have to acquire the ruble, which they're gonna
Exactly.
sell, and therefore
The price of the ruble will go up.
right.
Yes.
And basically, and also the Russian government has started collecting as much. See, a part of the sanctions was that Russia, the central government, they
Mm-hmm.
lost all of their dollars and euros. Basically, got confiscated from them by the owners of those currencies.
Yeah.
Like by the
Whoa.
American government, by the
Okay.
EU, they basically confiscated
Right.
all of that money from the Russian central bank. So they were left with no dollars, no euros. So what they've done to get
Right.
all of that back is basically now people are not allowed to travel with large sums within the country with
Mm-hmm.
large sums of this currency. Otherwise, they will seize it from you. And now the
Oh.
bank can get that money back.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Also, if you have a job that pays, like for example YouTube, that pays in US dollars, there's a policy that within like a certain amount of time you have to go and you have to exchange it at the bank for rubles.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to keep your money in
Okay.
dollars. If you're earning it as like your salary, you have to go and exchange it for
Wow,
rubles.
Russia is so smart, guys.
I have a question that will sort of like lead us towards the end, and so we'll get this is a really good one. Future for Russia, like say that we have 5 years down the line, like there's a war going on with Ukraine. What do you see happening in the next 5 years? Like the future of Russia, like its relationships with the West, it's sort of war with the Ukraine, and so all we gotta ask is that
Right.
5 years, 10 years down the line, what do you think is gonna be the
Right,
situation?
and all we're asking for is just your opinion on it.
We're asking
Backed by
opinion.
all of the information,
We
all
don't-
of the primary
this is-
evidence that you have,
this
all of the
is-
secondary sources you have, just your.
This is
opinion.
unbiased, by the way. We're just trying to find out
Right.
like what you think because we want to get into the mind of you and we want to find out what you think.
Well,
Entering the
obviously-
mind of Samir. Yeah, go on.
Well, obviously it's that's a very complicated question.
Of course,
to
it's
answer, right?
complicated, but like we want to know what you think. It's like
I mean, honestly, I haven't ever thought about that before.
Oh.
I as a Russian citizen, am concerned for me personally, for the fact, like, you know, I'm in grade 11, right? I'm gonna go to like university. I'm supposed to go to university in like 2 years.
Right.
I want to study in Europe or in North America.
Right.
But now with the way that the West views Russia and Russians, like they're very like now hostile, right? Towards
Right,
towards
right, yeah.
towards like my country.
Most
and-
definitely.
Right.
And people, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be very hard for me as a Russian passport holder to get a visa in those countries and to stay there, to study there.
Ah, now
So-
see, that's a practical
Yeah.
problem.
That-
that's a
that-
big problem.
and
now.
so what do you think? Like what do you think is going to like? How do you think this can be solved? Is there any way that we can sort of like moving on to the future? Do you think that this will be solved? Do you think that peace will be like? Of course, this is a very like deep philosophical, and it's a
kind of abstract, right? But
Yeah.
then, like,
Yeah.
just your personal
Like-
opinion, no
like-
strings attached about if this is gonna
like
be solved.
even governments don't know how to answer this question, but it's sort of like what does Samir think? Like what can like what is Russia? Like what is going to happen in the next 5
Well,
years?
I mean, here's what I hope will happen.
Awesome, nice.
Okay.
Here's what I
Yeah.
hope will happen. I mean, obviously I don't want like this special operation in Ukraine.
And is that the consensus of most people in Russia or most people in Tajikistan
I
that
mean-
you've interacted with?
I mean, just like with any political, you know, like issue,
Right.
there's always going to be these two extremes, right? And
Right.
people will always like argue with each other. I'd say like I'm in the middle,
In
right?
the middle.
I would say I'm in the middle. You have people in Russia that are
Right.
very nationalistic. They're like
Yeah.
they support this operation
This
very
operation,
much.
this-
I personally did see people walking around with like symbol like shirts
Whoa.
that had like messages that support what's going on in Ukraine. But then there are also people in Russia, and you see them on the news as well.
Right.
And I've met personally some of them, that they don't like it. They don't want it, right? They're like before this conflict. I mean, Slavic countries as a whole, they had this sort of sense of like brotherhood, of sisterhood. Like Russians and Ukrainians, they used to
Like
get
Russia
along.
would consider
used
itself
to.
like the
Absolutely,
protector of Slavic
right?
nations.
The brother of all
I,
Slavs.
I wouldn't necessarily say right like protector, but definitely like we used to be friends as a country. Like people of those two ethnicities, they didn't like oppose each other. Obviously, there was that portion of the population, but as a whole, I'd say we were very friendly with each other, and so there are these people who want to keep it that way, keep it friendly,
Right. Right.
and
nice.
then I have this in right. I'd say I'm in the middle.
In the middle.
I'm
Like,
right. Yeah. But then
Of course,
I'd-
of course, lives, people dying is never justified.
exactly.
And so Samir is not condoning
Yes.
the lives and the people who've had to move and all of it. But explain, continue.
So, see, people will right say like, oh, this is the fault of Russia, or this is the fault of Ukraine, or oh, this is the fault of like NATO and America and stuff like that. I say it's everybody's fault. Everybody every country who is involved in this conflict, in this operation in some way, is all of their faults.
Understood. So just to clarify one thing, you do not think it's Ukraine's fault. You think it's everyone who's involved. Their fault.
Yes.
Got
Okay.
it. Yeah. Nice that we got that out of the way.
And so
Continue.
And
One
so
second.
don't you
Continue.
believe that this is kind of a child, like not childish, but it's sort of like a, like how to say, like we're at like a global stage where like situations like this are happening. And so yeah, this so continue. Like, what is your take on these situations that are going on right now, like with this Russian and Ukraine conflict? And so, let's just continue.
Well, like I said before, right? I'm in the middle. I believe it's like the fault is shared. To put it very simplistically, and keep in mind when you do simplify things too much,
It
they
tends to
do
get
they
complicated.
they do get like
Right.
incorrect, factually
you
wrong.
cannot get the full picture if you
Yeah.
simplify.
Like,
it.
we
But
don't-
still, just for the viewers, just simplify it a
Like
little
like
bit.
like Samir, talk about how like nobody knows what's going on right now in Putin. Some people think that he's sick and he has some form of cancer. Some people believe other stuff, and so we will never truly know why the war happened. So continue. So
See, here's my opinion, right? And it's not necessarily like the best opinion or like the correct opinion. I'm not saying it's just what I believe. So, but do I hate Ukraine? No, I don't. No, I don't. It's like I straight don't I don't hate Ukraine, but what I will say that the fault that I will place on Ukraine is basically I'd like Ukraine to stay neutral, right? To not be in NATO, but also
Right.
not to like be under like Russian
But
influence.
why is that? Why would you like Ukraine to be that? Like, what's
Like-
Well, because I simply think it's fair, right? I mean,
Oh.
I also it's what Russia wanted in the first place. When we're talking about like back in the Cold War, like the 80s and 90s, Russia was really pushing when the Soviet Union
was
fell.
this like during Gorbachev's time?
when
Gorbachev, right? It was Gorbachev's time, right? Like when he was.
he was yeah like one of the last Soviet leaders, but
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
but there was also like the Russian leader that took when the Soviet Union fell. There was the new Russian president, but it's like really controversial, obviously, right? Because it's an opinion, and it's going to interfere with other people's
It
opinions.
might even hurt other people. People
Yeah.
listen, like our viewers might listen to this and think, what is Samir saying?
Yeah.
But
So
which is why, ladies and gentlemen, we need a little bit of like supporting stuff, like
Exactly.
for why you're saying this, please.
so
And so,
go on.
and also, we also a lot of what we're saying, we're gonna have a fact check below where we're gonna have a document with a lot of our sources and a lot of like where we get our information, because like we're not gonna make stuff up because it's not fair to you and it's just like not the right thing to do. So whatever we have, we'll have a document that'll be attached to a link where people can see where we get our sources from. Okay, yeah, so go.
I mean, see, Ukraine, there was an understanding within the Russian
Yeah.
government, like during the times directly after the Soviet Union fell, that Ukraine would stay neutral. That Ukraine would stay neutral.
Right.
And like not go to the West, but also to satisfy the West, not go to Russia.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But then Ukraine, after around like 2012, 2013, Ukraine started being more pro-Western,
Yes.
Okay.
more pro-NATO and pro-EU.
Okay.
And so obviously this made the Russian government like quite tense because
Also, guys,
they
we gotta-
felt violated.
One second. Also, guys, we gotta apologize that we're saying we're ending it, but we're sort of continuing on. So let's let
Yeah.
Samir talk and continue on.
So, but now that Zelensky, right? The leader of Ukraine currently. He's like more pro-Western, and so this has definitely made the Russian government a bit upset, a bit tense. They don't want this to happen. And you know, over these years, they have been like protesting diplomatically for Ukraine to remain neutral, but now it's come to the point where, I mean, I don't know the particular reason, but there was some sort of line that was crossed
Right.
within the past, you know, couple of years that
Okay.
made Putin obviously go like, all right, that's it. Diplomacy
Like
is
Crimea.
not working.
not
Wait, Crimea was the
We-
start of it, right?
We have to go in there and to
Wait.
do this special
Wait,
military
Samir, I have a
operation.
question. Crimea happened in 2015. Am I not wrong?
2014.
2014. So, was that also because of this? Why did?
So so in Crimea you have a lot of ethnic Russians in there.
Right.
And the official reason that the Russian government gave for going in there is to protect the ethnic Russians that are there, because
Okay.
there's a lot of allegations. These are not facts, but allegations
Yeah.
that that a lot of these ethnic Russian people in Ukraine are basically like suffering in a way. Like they're not necessarily like the government isn't treating them well, that the Ukrainians aren't treating them well. Do I necessarily like believe that? Do I think it's true? I don't know. I don't know. Because I just don't have a lot of knowledge about that, right? I mean, yeah, but these are the allegations that,
Right.
that the Russian government back then used to justify the reason why they integrated Ukraine as one of their provinces in Russia. But if we're talking more geopolitically,
Yeah.
Crimea does have, in the surrounding waters,
Right.
it does have some oil there. Plus
Oh.
Sevastopol is a warm water port. So it benefits in general integrating this piece of land, this basically peninsula or island.
Right.
It benefits the Russian economy.
So that's such a good point right there, because it's not all just like, you know, yeah, stay neutral and stuff like that. It's kind of business related too. It's also kind of economics and for the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from a geopolitical perspective, that is there.
Right. Yeah. So then now
Yeah.
back to the future. I
Okay.
mean,
I
right.
mean, like.
Not the film, the question. Back to the future, guys.
Okay, so yeah, continue, Samir.
So,
And we
oh
can sort
wow,
of
yeah,
end-
we really got sidetracked.
Yeah, and we can sort
No,
of
but
like,
it's good sidetracking. So
we can
yeah.
sort of use this to like end off a little bit.
Lenient.
Yeah.
See, when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this hope in Russia that finally the West and the East would become friends. There was this hope. There was this hope. Because
Right.
obviously people in the Soviet Union, right? They were like, oh, NATO's the enemy and stuff like that. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this hope.
Right.
Now that the Soviet Union is gone,
Right.
can America and Russia, and the West in general,
Right.
can these two be friends? Can we finally be friends?
Awesome.
And when, see, NATO was found, one of the core reasons NATO was founded was for anti-communist purposes.
Yeah.
And obviously the Soviet Union was communist, but now that the Soviet Union collapsed, they were like, will NATO dissolve?
Right. Yeah.
Will NATO disband? You know,
Right.
can we be friends?
Right.
So when NATO stayed around, there was this sense of betrayal.
Right.
Why are we still enemies? Why?
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. Go
So
on.
it's I share that opinion. I share
Right.
that sense of betrayal, even though I never lived in that time, right? I'm like, why did NATO stick
Right.
around?
Yeah. Why are they not accepting
Their
us? Right.
their purpose is long gone. Their original purpose
Which
in
was
this
there at the
world
start.
is long gone.
Exactly.
What communists do they have to, you know, like
Right.
fight?
Still stay there.
Like,
Oh.
and we're not gonna divulge into the communism and that kind of thing, because that we'll be here for 2 days otherwise. And so, let's alright, like give us your final closing remarks. So like, we're getting to the end. Is there anything you'd like to address? Just close it up and end it well.
You can't. There was this Stoic quote. Honestly,
Go on.
I don't remember. I don't remember who it was.
And ended up with that quote.
Yes, I will. But you can put it on the screen. You can Google, find the person who said it. But there was some Stoic philosopher who said that the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who take a neutral stand in times of moral crisis.
What do you mean by that? So
Dude, that's chills, literal chills.
Yes.
no, like that.
That is so deep. Go on.
Okay,
just
but
go
explain that a little
So
bit.
so basically, when there's a time of grave like moral disaster, like there's some ethical, some moral thing issue, and there's only like it's with morals. I'd say there are cases,
Right.
not all the cases, but there are cases where it's black and white.
Right, there is a
The-
stark dichotomy present. Go on. Yeah,
Exactly. And so this quote implies that if you are you should not remain neutral.
Yeah. Right.
You should take a side. You need to take a side.
You know what? That's a beautiful note to end this on. Firstly, round of applause. Round of
We
applause.
just like to say thank you to
Right
Samir.
there. For sure.
And
Thank you,
so,
Samir.
let me.
And if there's one thing you want to take away from this video today, it's that Soham and I are legends. Samir is an amazing legend. And more than that, it's that quote about moral ground. So when there's a moral conflict, do not pick a neutral side.
Okay, so I'd just like to say thank you to Samir for giving up his time and coming here. I'd like to say thank you for all the fans. So this is going to be released on Spotify, YouTube, and many other broadcasts. So we'd like for you guys to download it. Please share it with your friends as we're new. This is
Most
our first
definitely.
video. And so we just like to thank everybody. And with that, we just like to end it with a goodbye. And
Right.
thank you.
We
I
need
guess-
your love, guys. We need your
Yes.
love.
I
Goodbye.
guess. Good.